Sleepwalking with my ghost friend. The Sentries Exchange Part. 1. The first signs and the lure, it began subtly, an insidious creep into my already strained life. My days were a blur of isolation and high-stress work. My nights, a fragile escape. That fragile barrier shattered the morning I found my bedroom slippers by the front door. I live alone, yet my memory was clear. I'd left them neatly beside my bed. I initially blamed exhaustion, but the second night brought a chilling dream. Standing in a long, cold hallway, watching shadows writhe against the wall, slow and deliberate. When I woke, the taste of stale air lingered, and the soles of my feet were blackened with dirt and a faint organic grime. As I stood in the doorway, staring into the silent hallway, I heard the faint, high-pitched whistle, a sound of immense distance, yet right in my ear. For the first time, I wondered if I was truly alone in my sleep. Part 2. The silent pull and the oak's heartbeat. The following nights grew heavier, like the darkness itself was learning the weight of my name. Lying in bed, I felt an intense, cold, irresistible pull beneath my skin. Not fear, but a morbid invitation. Once I surrendered, my body moved as if guided by an invisible, icy leash tied to my ankle. I would wake up in strange places, always, with the phantom sensation of a thin, dragging sound shuffling in the shadows behind me. Then, he appeared. A small figure, intensely pale, standing just at the edge of the hallway light. His eyes were the most disturbing part. Two deep, vacant hollows that reflected the dim light in a distorted, unnatural way. He never spoke, only raised a thin, bloodless hand pointing toward the corridor's end. One night, he led me outside. My fingers sank into the earth near the old oak tree. I felt the soil, but beneath it, I touched a massive, ice-cold root that seemed to be gently breathing beneath my palms, the ground's terrifying heartbeat. As I dug, I noticed the boy's vacant eyes reflected the faint image of a small wooden necklace. He was a prisoner bound here. With a renewed, desperate urgency, he pointed, but this time, he frantically scratched a crude symbol on the tree bark, a circle with 3 radiating lines, a chilling map of the binding roots. Part 3. Research. And the whispering curse. The discovery of the heartbeat and the symbol broke my denial. I began researching the land. Old Town records revealed a pattern of unexplained losses and a missing child report from nearly a century ago. A boy named Thomas, who vanished near the wishing tree of sorrow. He was the boy beside me. My research was confirmed when I found a faded note tucked into a drawer, not in my handwriting. The roots feed, don't look for the boy. That same night, Thomas, the boy, was agitated. He didn't beckon. He stood in my waking reality, drawing on the moisture of the window with his translucent fingers. He drew the root symbol again. Then, his empty eyes darted past me to the corner of the room. A chilling, low-frequency hum began to vibrate through the floor. His form began to shimmer and fade in fear. With a final, desperate burst, he scratched one final, desperate letter on the glass before vanishing. R. Run. Part 4. The full assault and the guardian's sacrifice. The warnings were too late. The shadow knew I knew. It intensified its hunt. My phone rang every 3 a.m. with no caller ID, playing a deep, moist static that felt like it was whispering my name. The grand shadow had stopped relying on the boy to guide me. It was hunting me directly. One night, I was lying in bed, fully awake, but the room dissolved. I was trapped in a lucid nightmare, the air thick with decay. Thomas was there, faint, pulling me back to my body. The grand shadow manifested directly. a mass of swirling, oily blackness that tasted like ash. "You are mine now," the thought stabbed into my mind, resonating with a chorus of whispering voices. Thomas, with a silent, desperate scream of his own, flung himself at the shadow. He couldn't fight it, but he obstructed its view. The shadow retaliated with brutal, immediate force, tearing at Thomas's ethereal form. A section of the boy's torso flickered, went translucent, and then disappeared entirely, as if a piece of his soul had been ripped away. The immense shock of watching the boy be physically harmed ripped me back to my waking body. I woke up, screaming, knowing Thomas had paid a heavy price to keep me out of the full embrace of the entity. Part 5. The Last Walk. The exchange tonight, the air was thick with the smell of damp clay and sulfur. I knew the Grand Shadow was furious, and I knew Thomas was weak. This time, I didn't sleepwalk. I woke up to the touch of an icy hand gripping my wrist. It was Thomas, pulling me, not toward the darkness, but toward the front door. "Run!" I heard the thought in my mind, a frantic, icy scream of pure thought. The Grand Shadow roared its presence. It didn't glide. It surged from the hallway, a massive, accelerating blur of raw hunger. We fled into the cold yard. Thomas dragged me to the oak tree and stopped, turning his back to the roots, directly facing the advancing shadow. He lifted his hand and pointed at himself. "Take me. I'm here." His silent plea was heartbreaking. I understood. He was making the exchange. The shadow, its hunger immense, stopped before us. It began to divide into long black tendrils that snaked toward Thomas. The boy looked at me one last time. For a brief, heartbreaking moment, I saw a single icy tear track down his empty cheek. He released my hand. "Don't look back." A deafening primal shriek of agonizing release split the air. I was thrown backwards by a surge of overwhelming hot energy. Part 6. The aftermath and the token of war. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. The house was silent. The terrifying grip of the Mongdu was gone. But as I stepped onto the floor, I saw a small waterlogged cloth doll, a tattered antique toy with faded blue stitching for eyes, lying neatly on my pillow. It felt ice cold to the touch. I knew this was the token of the exchange, a residual echo of Thomas's binding. I tried to burn it, but it only released a faint, cold mist that smelled faintly of rain and wet earth. The shadow still lingered. Now, however, the hauntings were subtle. I would be lying in bed, and the doll, sitting on my bedside table, would become intensely cold. Then, the faintest heartbroken whimpering would come from the stitching. This was the signal. When the whimpering started, I knew the shadow was reaching out. But now, the doll was my shield. The moment the shadow's influence pressed near my bed, the doll would vibrate violently, and the whimpering would turn into a silent, icy shriek that pushed the darkness back. I was no longer a victim. I was the new sentry of the house, locked in a perpetual stalemate. I slept with the doll clutched in my hand, accepting my role as the reluctant, living barrier against the terrifying will of the roots. The Grand Shadow was still waiting, but I knew that as long as I held this cold little cloth doll, I was guarding the sacrifice, and I was ready for the next encounter.